Su Qing's autobiographical novel 10 Years of Marriage Chapter 14. The Curse of the Small Family. Next morning when we arrived in Shanghai, Mrs. Lu had already sent Ailing to meet us and invited us to have lunch at her house today. She and I did not answer. After we checked our luggage, we asked the waiter to hire a car and drove to the new house with Lin Ma and the other 4 people. Along the way, my heart was very warm. I felt that real happiness was about to begin. Everything here was new, and I could make my own decisions. The car stopped at the entrance of Dehua Lane, and Ailing said, "The second house here, is it?" I looked at the house and it was clean. We rented the upper floor of the living room. 2/3 of the room was separated by wooden boards, divided into 2 rooms, front and back. The back room was used as a bedroom for Lin Ma and a place to store sundries. Ailing had bought us a bed, a table, a chair, and other things in advance and put them in the room. I found these things interesting because they were all mine. While Lin Ma was complaining about how a Shanghai bed looked without a tent. Although Ailing told her that there were no mosquitoes here, she always felt that it was too inconvenient to change her underwear and inner shoes. Xian and I discussed moving the furniture a little bit and roughly putting the things we brought. It was already past 10 o'clock. Ailing said, "Let's go to my house and have lunch first, and Lin Ma will go with us." Xian looked at me and hesitated for a long time. Seeing that I didn't say anything, he had to say it himself. "The door here is not locked. I'm afraid it will be inconvenient for everyone to go out. I think we should ask Lin Ma to go out and buy some snacks while we are all here. She doesn't have to go with us. Let her stay here to look after the house and organize things." Ailing and I had nothing to say, only Lin Ma objected with a sad face, saying that she didn't know the roads in Shanghai, and where should she go to buy snacks? Being run over by a car is no joke. Xian had no choice but to give her all the cakes and biscuits we had left on the ship yesterday to fill her stomach, and the 3 of us went straight to Lu's house. Lu's house is not far from here. On the way, I secretly thought that I had to stop for a while to meet Ruixian, and I was a little reluctant. Unexpectedly, I didn't see her again when I arrived at Lu's house. When I asked her, I learned that she usually went back to her mother's house, and recently she went to Qingdao with her mother, brother and sister-in-law. This made me feel relieved and secretly happy that Xian's words to me in the past were not lies. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but look up at him, and my heart had a lot more feelings for him. Mrs. Lu seemed very happy to see me, and she kept praising me for my recent appearance. How could I tell that I was a woman who had raised a child? I said, "The baby is almost 1 year old." She couldn't help but purse her lips and laughed. "Really, we old ladies are going to be outdated." Thinking about it, I still remember clearly that I was the same age as you, holding babies in my white and plump arms. Later, as the babies grew up, my arms became skinny. Now they are as shriveled, not even as good as Chiludai. I listened silently, wishing that I didn't have to raise children anymore. So we talked a lot, and went home in the evening. Ailing wanted to see us off, but Xianlian said it was not necessary. On the way home, Xian asked me if Lin Ma had cooked for us. I said of course she wouldn't, because we hadn't bought rice or coal, and she was not familiar with the routes in Shanghai. Xian said that if she was a smart person, wouldn't she ask the landlady downstairs? At this point, he suddenly remembered that he had to close the door when he went out, so he went to the hardware store with me to buy a spring lock. When I walked into the room, I saw Lin Ma crying with her feet in her hands. I said, "Auntie Lin, what's the matter?" She quickly wiped her tears and stood up and answered, "Nothing. I'm really not used to the stairs here. I just wanted to scoop some water to test the room. The tap water is on the lower floor, and you have to go to the balcony to pour out the dirty water." Once I accidentally spilled some water, and the landlord's grandmother came to talk to me. She looked very fierce, and her words were gibberish, and I couldn't hear clearly. I was very angry when I heard it. When I went downstairs to argue with the landlord, Xian waved her hand and said that they were all Cantonese and couldn't explain clearly. The second landlord in Shanghai was notoriously fierce, so I had to suppress my temper for the time being. But the most important thing was, what about dinner? Xian said that he would take Auntie Lin outside to order 3 bowls of noodles. I suddenly became excited and said that sooner or later I would have to cook it myself, so why not go buy rice and coal now? Xian stretched and said that it was okay, but I had to have a cup of tea first. So I took Lin Ma to find a tiger stove to boil water. Fortunately, it was not far away. When Lin Ma carried the water up the stairs, she was only panting. I felt very sad when I heard it, and my legs seemed to feel sore. I went to the room to look for the tea I brought, but I couldn't find it. Xian had to drink a cup of boiled water. After drinking it, he urged me to leave. I barely cheered up and felt that Lin Ma really couldn't go with me anymore, so I left her at home. Rice is 1 yuan per bucket, and coal balls are 9 cents per load. Just leave your address and ask them to deliver it. So we spent another 4 cents to buy a small coal ball stove and 2 slightly larger steel pots. The iron pots were bought in N City and brought back. I couldn't think of anything else for a while, so Xian carried the coal ball stove and I held the steel pot. On the way back, I bought 10 cooked salted eggs. Xian said that he could take them, but I refused, so he put them in my pot. Later, Xian wanted to buy braised pork again. I said I was afraid it was dirty and unhygienic, so he let it go. When we got home, the rice had already been delivered. Lin Ma couldn't pay, so she asked the waiter to wait at the door. So Xian gave the money, took out a cloth bag to hold the rice, and asked Lin Ma to wash the pot and rice first. We found the bowls and chopsticks and put them in place, ready to burn the coal balls as soon as they arrived, and eat them when they were cooked. Xian smiled and added, "Go to bed after eating." But the coal balls didn't come for a long time, so I said, "Ask Lin Ma to urge them." Xian said she didn't know the way. I said, "Then you go yourself." He said it was the housewife's job, and I couldn't do it for her. I was very angry and refused to move, but when it got dark, they brought it themselves. Xian suddenly said, "Oh, it's bad." I asked him why, and he said what to use to make a fire: paper, bamboo strips, firewood, charcoal, nothing. I said that there were papers available, so I took out all the papers that were wrapped around things and gave Lin Ma a box of matches and asked her to try it. Lin Ma asked where to put the stove. I said of course in the kitchen. Xian pondered for a long time and said, "It's better to burn it in your own back room, so as not to trouble others to give up their positions. You can go to the balcony to light the fire." Lin Ma agreed and laughed. After a while, she suddenly came down in a panic and said, "Miss, you didn't bring the big banana fan. Hurry up and get something to fan the stove for me. The paper is already burning." Xian hurriedly gave her the calligraphy and painting book he used as a fan. After a while, she came down again listlessly and said, "Miss, I can't light this kind of small stove. After burning paper, the coal balls are still round and black, without even sparks." I was furious and said, "If Mr. Lin doesn't come, do you still want me to go? I tell you, I'm starving." Xian thought for a moment and said, "You eat 2 eggs first. I'll go help Aunt Lin light the stove. The coal balls should be broken, and it's better to find some thick paper." So without waiting for my consent, he tore off a piece of my shoebox and hurriedly went to the balcony with Aunt Lin. I leaned on the bed in anger and lay there for a while. I felt bad and had to go to the balcony. The balcony was full of smoke. Xian was fanning with sweat, and Aunt Lin also had sweat on her forehead. She pointed at one and said to Xian apologetically, "Son-in-law, let me fan it." "Son-in-law, let me try." I said, "You don't have to work. I'll fan it, and it will definitely work." But Xian didn't allow it, and watched the coal balls gradually burn red. We all had a meal exhausted. I only ate 1 bowl. Xian ate 1.5 bowls. So I gave the dishes to Lin Ma to wash, and Xian said we should go to bed first and sort them out tomorrow. I didn't object, and just washed my face casually. Everyone went to bed. In the middle of the night, I woke up suddenly and felt itchy round my waist. I scratched it randomly for a while, and it became blurry. But after a moment, the itch became unbearable, and I felt uncomfortable all over. I didn't care to wake Xian up, and turned on the light to see clearly. It turned out that there were bumps on my skin. Xian also rubbed his eyes and asked me what I was doing. I told him. He opened his eyes and looked for a while, suddenly pinched a small thing and said, "Isn't that a bedbug?" The noise woke up Aunt Lin, and she also turned on the light and caught them on her bed. We caught dozens of them, and our index fingers were covered with blood. The more we caught, the more interested we became, until we fell asleep at dawn. The next day, when we got up, we called Aunt Lin twice. but she didn't respond. We thought maybe she hadn't woken up yet. When we went to the back room to check, there was no trace of her, so I stood at the top of the stairs and called again. The landlord's Cantonese aunt came out and said that she had gone out to buy something. I was wondering what she had gone there to buy, and what if she was really run over by a car. Xian told me not to worry about her, saying that a person of her age must have some brains, but I was still a little worried, so he persuaded me again and again. And sure enough, Aunt Lin came back in a good mood after a while. I jumped in front of her and said, "Aunt Lin, what are you doing out there?" She laughed and said, "I went to buy firewood and charcoal, and they will deliver it in a while." So I admired her boldness and service spirit. The first difficulty was to light the coal stove, and the second difficulty was to clean the floor. Somehow, the floors in Shanghai were more likely to get dirty than those in city. To clean the floor every other day, the water had to be carried up from downstairs, which was a life-threatening task for Lin Mai. Xian and I discussed and felt that we had to help her. So we decided that Xian would carry the water up from downstairs and let Lin Ma do the floor cleaning work. If the water was dirty, I would take it to the balcony to pour it out, and then give the empty lead bucket to Xian. And then Xian would go downstairs to carry clean water up. Everyone divided the work and cooperated, and finally solved this big problem. However, there were some troubles in the process. That is, when there were 3 of us, you were often free but I was not. And when she was strong, you were not strong. So the result became cleaning once every 3 days, once every 5 days, and even once a week. Of course, this was not a big deal. But once, Xian said to me, "Let's mop the floor again today. Tomorrow I have 4 or 5 classmates coming to dinner, and they all want to see you." I was happy and worried at the same time, so I tried my best to hide my joy and worried about what side dishes to buy. He said, "For cold dishes, 1 is peanuts, 1 is barbecued pork, 1 is preserved eggs, and 1 is grilled crucian carp with green onions. The above 3 dishes are all bought ready-made and can be eaten with wine. The crucian carp is cooked in advance and is the most direct to eat with rice. In addition, make for hot dishes, fried eggs, fried pork ribs, drac yellow croaker, and stir-fried miscellaneous items. Have a soup during dinner, and it's done." I asked Lin's mother, and she said it was easy, so we decided quickly and decided to treat them to dinner tomorrow. The next morning, I cleaned up the room and urged Lin's mother to buy small dishes quickly. Xian said that the dishes brought from home were not good-looking enough, and it would be better to buy a new set. I asked him to go quickly, and when he came back, he brought a bouquet of flowers in a vase. Mother Lin said, "There is no pork liver, so let's stir-fry beef shreds." I said that's fine, as long as it is cooked tender, so we helped her cook for half a day. At around 4 p.m., Xian went to invite guests. I quickly combed my hair and changed my clothes. I felt that shoes were the most difficult. Wearing high heels seemed too pretentious, and wearing slippers seemed not serious enough. If I wore ordinary shoes, it seemed too rustic. I thought about it alone for a long time. Mother Lin would come to ask from time to time, such as whether to add more vinegar to crucian carp, whether to mix ribs with water chestnut powder. I said, "Everything is up to you. As long as it tastes good, don't embarrass me." She listened to it and became more serious, and I became more worried about her. It was past 6 o'clock, and the guests were still not seen. Xian didn't come back either. I was very anxious. I heard the sound of stairs later. Xian led 3 friends to come, so I was flustered, moving stools and holding tea, not knowing what to do. While helping me, Lin Ma secretly said that there might not be enough food for so many people. I told her to keep quiet and think of something to do. It was really annoying to talk with men. At first, they were all chatting, and then they were silent. Later, I don't know who got thicker-skinned, and when the game started, the conversation gradually became more intense. I have experience with this. In the past, no matter what kind of man I was with, when I was alone with him, he always spoke very sincerely and politely. But when there were many people, it was different. Everyone focused on making fun of you, and whoever didn't join in a few words seemed to be suspicious. This time, the purpose of their jokes seemed to be focused on the bed. They talked about 2 pillows and only 1 quilt. They talked so lively that I just felt a little strange in my heart. Although I didn't feel happy, I didn't think it was boring. Finally, the cold dishes were put in place, and everyone was asked to sit down. Xian asked me to pour wine. The 4 cold dishes were swept away. I was very anxious, and I didn't know how Lin Ma was cooking, so I left the table and quietly ran to the kitchen. I saw that Aunt Lin had already put in the oil and was preparing to cook fried eggs. I said to Aunt Lin, "Go buy some more barbecued pork, and I'll cook the eggs." She took the money and left. I put the eggs in the pot, but they didn't look right. Some of them didn't look like fried eggs, and the skin looked a little burnt. I hurriedly stirred them and decided to just scramble them. Xian saw that I hadn't come up for a long time, so he went to the kitchen to observe. When I was telling him why he couldn't cook fried eggs and had to change to scrambled eggs, all the friends came down and said that the host didn't need to be polite. If we couldn't finish cooking more dishes, we should just cook whatever we wanted. We really felt ashamed because we really didn't have any dishes, but they thought it was just a polite remark. Finally, Aunt Lin came, but her dishes today were not good. Every dish was too salty and lacked freshness. Fortunately, these classmates were all from other places and thought our dishes were always like this, so they didn't find it strange. I was worried that they hadn't had enough, so I winked at Xian and asked him to come to the back room to discuss. "I want to make some more snacks." "Okay, cook the oatmeal with milk and add some cocoa." Xian nodded and said it was up to me, so I told Lin Ma to clean the pot quickly, but the coal stove was not burning well at that time. I was so impatient that I poured the oatmeal in before the water was fully boiled. When the oatmeal was almost cooked, I felt that I didn't put enough, so I added more. The raw and cooked oatmeal were mixed together and became a thick paste. I had to add more water and milk. I put too much cocoa and didn't know if there was enough sugar. After a while of chaos, I finally filled 6 bowls and asked Lin Ma to serve them. Everyone praised them politely. It was not until they left that Xian told me, "This bowl of oatmeal is really unpalatable," as if it was not cooked thoroughly. The guests frowned when they ate it, but they had to swallow it reluctantly. Why didn't any of it smell of milk? I was so ashamed and angry that I simply cried and argued with him. "There is no milk. Did I eat it secretly?" The guests who flatter you well-intentionally still find faults with you and talk nonsense to others. I don't know how to manage a household. I can't entertain guests. Tomorrow, you can send me back to An City with Lin Mai. Small family life is simply torture. I have to make this and that every day, buy this and that, and buy this and that. I can't stand it. Lin Ma was also pouting in the kitchen. I knew what was going on and felt embarrassed for her, so I took out my anger on Xian. It was his friend's fault. He ate all the wine, food and side dishes, but when he left, he acted like a student and didn't give the servants any rewards. I began to curse small family life. Everything was so troublesome. I had to decide everything myself, and there was no one to discuss with. Xian said that it was because of inexperience, and he would get used to it after a while.
Alright, this part of the story ends here.
Want to know what happened next? Let's listen to the breakdown next time.